The cameras were rolling, the crowds were cheering, and then, in a moment no one saw coming, Catherine, Princess of Wales, turned on her heel and walked out, leaving stunned aides and royal watchers frozen in disbelief. The future Queen Consort had just staged a silent rebellion, but what really happened behind that perfectly composed exterior? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. It happened so fast, and yet everything about it was deliberate. One moment, Catherine was fulfilling her role with poise, standing at the center of a carefully choreographed engagement. The next, she was gone, leaving behind a trail of confusion, tension, and unanswered questions. A senior aide rushed after her, panic visible in her posture, but she never caught up. What witnesses described as a sharp exchange moments earlier now echoed louder than any official speech that day. There were no public words, no obvious scandal, just the unmistakable tension of a royal breaking protocol in real time. Cameras tried to follow, but the truth had already slipped out of view, and in its place, a storm began to build. By the time palace officials addressed the walkout, the speculation had already consumed the internet. Their response was cold and calculated, a vague note referencing personal matters and asking for privacy. But that only fed the frenzy. Footage from the event spread across social media within minutes, frame by frame, dissected by commentators, body language experts, and royal fans alike. The silence from Kensington Palace was deafening, and in its absence, 1,000 theories filled the void. What had been said? What line had been crossed? And why now, after so many years of careful restraint, did Catherine choose this moment to walk away? Whispers inside the palace hinted at rising tensions behind the scenes. While the public marveled at Catherine's grace and composure, those closest to the crown knew the truth was far more volatile. The aide seen following her was not just a background figure, she was someone deep within Catherine's inner circle. Their sudden fallout at such a visible moment couldn't be ignored. It was not a lapse in etiquette. It was a breach. A message. A signal that something beneath the surface had finally erupted. For a woman known for her unshakable calm, the decision to leave mid-engagement was not emotional, it was intentional. And while the world debated whether this was a fleeting moment or the start of something larger, insiders understood immediately. This was not an isolated incident. The palace, a machine built on silence and order, had just been jolted by its most valuable asset walking off script. Catherine wasn't just leaving a room, she was leaving behind the illusion of control. The choice to do so, especially in public, was both dangerous and bold. But what had pushed her to this point? What pressure, what betrayal, had led the future queen to turn her back on the crown's choreography? But this wasn't just a bad day or a missed cue, this was the spark that ignited a chain reaction threatening to unravel the royal image from within. The woman seen whispering urgently to Catherine moments before the exit was no stranger. She was a trusted figure deep within the princess's inner circle. But new revelations suggest her loyalty may have already been in question long before that explosive exchange. For years, she had been one of the most visible yet quiet constants by Catherine's side. A senior communications advisor with unrivaled access, she managed the princess's engagements, shaped press briefings, and reportedly advised on Catherine's most sensitive public appearances. But those who had been paying close attention noticed something had shifted in recent months. The warmth, once seen between them, had cooled. Catherine, known for her grace under pressure, had begun to appear tense in moments that once felt effortless. Now, in the wake of the public fallout, those subtle cues have taken on a much darker meaning. Whispers of internal discord had been circulating for some time. Sources inside the palace hinted at disagreements over how Catherine's public image was being handled, particularly in the wake of increasingly invasive press coverage. Catherine had always tried to shield her children and retain some semblance of privacy, but lately, her private schedule was appearing in media reports with suspicious accuracy. Fingers quietly pointed towards someone within her own camp, and the aide, though never officially named, was allegedly one of the few with access to that level of detail. A source close to the matter described the breach as calculated, suggesting that it wasn't a mistake but a message. Tensions escalated behind the scenes, particularly as Catherine tried to assert more control over her narrative. The divide wasn't just personal, it was institutional. Clarence House, still operating as the power base of King Charles and Queen Camilla, had long held influence over palace communications. And as Catherine's popularity soared, rumours grew that her independence was becoming inconvenient to others within the firm. Staff aligned with different households began to split loyalties. Some sided with Catherine, others fell in line behind the old guard. The aide in question, once fiercely loyal to Catherine, was suddenly being described by insiders as strategically aligned with external forces. What that meant remained deliberately vague, but the implications were undeniable. It didn't take long for the public to start piecing it together. Online discussions exploded with theories, many pointing directly to the woman caught in that fateful moment before Catherine's departure. The idea that someone so close could act as a saboteur added a new layer of intrigue and fury. Questions multiplied. Was this aide acting on her own? Was she following quiet instructions from higher up? And if so, what was the goal? Silence Catherine? Control her image? Or perhaps something deeper, reassert the old order's dominance over a future queen whose voice was beginning to challenge their grip? This wasn't just a personal betrayal, it was a political maneuver wrapped in whispers and hidden agendas. And as the web of loyalty and manipulation unraveled, the palace found itself gripped by a new question, one that no official statement could answer. Who, in this kingdom of shadows, was really pulling the strings? And as the mystery deepens around this aide's intentions, royal insiders begin whispering about a growing power struggle behind palace walls. Behind the glittering facade of unity, the royal household has been quietly divided. Catherine's walkout wasn't just about one aide, it was a symptom of a deeper fracture between her and the institution she was supposed to uphold. For years, Catherine had mastered the art of balance, honoring tradition while gently modernizing it, never pushing too far, never stepping out of line. But recently, that balance began to crack. Insiders describe a growing tension between Catherine and the palace's protocol enforcers, the unseen architects of royal behavior who dictate everything from tone to timing. What once felt like guidance started to feel like constraint. Every word scrutinized, every gesture rehearsed. Catherine, admired for her warmth and authenticity, found herself being asked to sand down the very qualities that made her relatable. And quietly, she began to resist. The conflict intensified around her public image. Catherine wanted flexibility, the ability to speak and act with sincerity, especially when engaging with causes close to her heart. The palace wanted control, consistency, predictability, obedience to the script. Disagreements over press strategy became frequent, then heated. Catherine pushed back against last-minute changes and heavy-handed messaging, while senior staff grew frustrated with what they called her unscripted moments. To them, spontaneity was risk. To Catherine, it was honesty. And that difference in philosophy widened into a fault line no one could ignore. Behind closed doors, frustration mounted on both sides. Palace staff complained that Catherine was becoming difficult, code for a royal no longer willing to quietly comply. Catherine, in turn, felt increasingly isolated within an institution that praised her publicly while constraining her privately. The walkout was not impulsive. It was the result of pressure building over months, perhaps years, a moment when restraint finally gave way to resolve. And once it happened, there was no pulling it back. Caught in the middle was William. Loyal to the crown, yet fiercely protective of his wife, he found himself navigating a minefield of expectations. Privately, he supported Catherine's desire for autonomy, understanding the toll of constant surveillance and control. Publicly, he was urged to remain neutral, to preserve the image of unity at all costs. The strain was visible. Those close to the couple said William was torn between duty and devotion, aware that choosing either side too openly could fracture something beyond repair. Outside the palace, the media sensed blood in the water. Headlines shifted from speculation to alarm. Commentators began asking uncomfortable questions. Was this simply internal tension spilling into public view, or the early signs of something far more serious? Is this the beginning of a royal schism? They asked, dissecting every frame of footage, every silence from the palace. The narrative of unity was faltering, replaced by whispers of rebellion and resistance. Catherine's walkout had done more than disrupt an event. It had exposed a monarchy struggling to reconcile control with change. And just as palace officials attempted to contain the damage, believing the storm might pass with enough silence and spin, evidence emerged. Proof that this fracture ran deeper than anyone had publicly admitted. But just when it seemed like a simple matter of miscommunication, a string of internal emails leaked to the press turned speculation into scandal. A bombshell leak to the press exposed internal communications, showing Catherine's team being undermined from within. The contents? Damning. The source? Still unknown. But one thing was certain: someone close to her wanted her silenced. It began with an anonymous package delivered to a leading UK media outlet, untraceable, encrypted, and unmistakably real. Inside were months' worth of internal emails exchanged between senior palace aides, revealing a web of manipulation that sent shockwaves through royal circles. The messages detailed everything from subtle redirections of Catherine's public messaging to outright criticism of her growing influence within the monarchy. But what stood out most was the tone, not one of concern or professionalism, but of strategic suppression. Lines such as "her message needs to be softened" and "contain the narrative before it snowballs" were chilling in their clarity. It was a coordinated effort to dilute Catherine's voice, and it came from within. As journalists sifted through the cache, they uncovered something far more sinister: references to events and locations that had never been made public. Catherine's private schedule, previously believed to be tightly protected, had been accessed and shared beyond her immediate team. And not just shared, but leaked. Royal watchers had long wondered how certain tabloids gained uncanny access to intimate details. Now, the puzzle pieces began to fit. Someone inside her trusted circle had been feeding information to the press, and the betrayal was more than personal, it was institutional. The language in the emails revealed not just frustration with Catherine's independence, but a clear intent to discredit her subtly and systematically. Descriptions of her public remarks as too unsupervised, complaints that she was building her own power base, and casual suggestions to steer the narrative away from her tone pointed to a deeper campaign. A quiet war being waged behind palace walls. And it wasn't just coming from nameless staff, it was supported, some believed, by those still loyal to Clarence House. The power struggle was no longer hypothetical. It was written out, word for word, in the inboxes of the monarchy. Catherine, upon learning of the leaks, reportedly confronted senior aides behind closed doors in what one insider described as controlled fury. There was no outburst, only cold. Precise questions no one was prepared to answer. She demanded accountability. She demanded truth, and when it didn't come, she demanded silence. Several aides were dismissed or reassigned within days, but the palace offered no official comment. Yet outside, the public was no longer in the dark. The hashtag number Protect Princess Catherine surged across social media, with supporters demanding transparency and condemning the palace's internal politics. What had once been whispers were now roars. But amid the chaos and growing support, one thing had become painfully clear to Catherine: this wasn't just about one aide, one event, or one betrayal. It was about the very foundation of power within the firm. And if she wanted to reclaim her voice, she'd have to do the unthinkable. Now isolated in a palace filled with whispers, Catherine takes a step. Few royals dare to take. She fights back. In an unprecedented move, Catherine goes off-script at a private event, delivering a speech that royal handlers never approved. It was poised. It was polished. And beneath the surface, it was a declaration of war. The setting may have been a charity gala, but the moment was anything but routine. As guests and dignitaries waited for the expected words of support, Catherine stepped to the podium with a composure that masked something far deeper defiance. The speech she delivered, though elegant and graceful, carried razor-sharp undertones. With carefully chosen language, she referenced the toll of media intrusion and the cost of having one's voice filtered through others. She spoke of the importance of protecting authenticity in public service and the quiet strength of those who stand firm while being reshaped by others' expectations. No names were mentioned, no events were cited, but everyone in the room and beyond understood who and what she was addressing. The reaction was immediate. Attendees erupted in applause, not out of courtesy, but resonance. For the first time in weeks, Catherine had spoken directly to the storm surrounding her, not through a palace-issued statement, but in her own words. The press seized on the moment. Headlines praised her candor and courage. Clips of the speech went viral within hours, sparking an outpouring of support and admiration. Social media branded her the modern people's princess, a woman who had walked through fire and chosen to speak, not run. It was a turning point not just in narrative, but in power. Inside the palace, however, the mood was anything but celebratory. Senior aides were livid. The speech had been reviewed in advance, only it wasn't the one she delivered. Catherine had rewritten it in secret, choosing to bypass the institutional voice that had silenced her for too long. What was meant to be a scripted, ceremonial appearance had become a battlefield, and Catherine had drawn first blood. The response from the firm was swift but shadowed. Behind closed doors, reprimands were discussed. Publicly, nothing was said. The silence this time wasn't strategic. It was stunned. When approached to issue a clarification or walk back her words, Catherine reportedly refused. There would be no retraction, no apology. She had said what needed to be said, and she wasn't going to pretend otherwise. It was a bold rejection of royal conditioning, and it came with risk. She was warned the gesture might backfire, that stepping out of line could have long-term consequences, but she had already faced the worst behind palace walls. Silence hadn't protected her. Compliance hadn't shielded her from betrayal. This speech was not rebellion for the sake of spectacle, it was survival wrapped in eloquence. And though she didn't name names, everyone knew the power centers she was confronting. The same people who had tried to break her spirit now found themselves facing a version of Catherine they hadn't planned for: confident, unyielding, and unafraid to be heard. The crown might command loyalty, but Catherine had won something more potent: the people. But as Catherine's popularity surges, her enemies dig deeper, and what they find could change the public's perception forever. Buried in old press clippings and forgotten royal briefings is a story Catherine never wanted revisited. But as tensions rise, a figure from her early royal years resurfaces, bringing with them secrets no one was supposed to remember. Just as Catherine began regaining control of the narrative, a shadow from her past re-emerged: an ex-staffer, long dismissed from palace service, now stepping forward with a damning tale. In an exclusive interview with a tabloid known for its ruthless access to royal corridors, the former Aide painted a portrait of Catherine as a woman at war with the system from the beginning. The revelations were explosive: reports of emotional breakdowns behind palace walls, claims of nights spent alone in near-total isolation, and a persistent refusal to conform to royal tradition. At the heart of it was a simple accusation: Catherine never truly adjusted. She endured, she adapted, but she never submitted. The source, once dismissed for insubordination, now came armed with what they claimed were internal memos and documents never meant for the public. These included summaries of private meetings, HR correspondences, and repeated complaints against an unnamed senior aide who, the source alleged, was systematically undermining the Duchess from her earliest days inside the firm. These documents, if authentic, revealed not just a history of mistreatment, but a pattern, a deliberate effort to pressure Catherine into compliance, to mold her into the silent figurehead the palace wanted. But instead of breaking, she pushed back, and in doing so, made enemies. According to the resurfaced claims, Catherine quietly orchestrated staff departures in her early years, those who, in her view, couldn't be trusted or didn't support her vision. Critics labelled it controlling. Supporters called it survival. Either way, the palace never acknowledged it until now, when the past began bleeding into the present. The press latched on quickly. Was the current crisis the result of long-standing bitterness between Catherine and palace lifers, or was it a reflection of an institution that punished anyone who didn't play by its script? Commentators were split. Some rallied to Catherine's defense, pointing out the immense pressure she faced as a young royal and the remarkable composure she maintained despite it all. Others, however, took a darker view, suggesting this pattern of behind-the-scenes confrontation had always been part of her strategy ambition cloaked in elegance. The media storm intensified. Debates unfolded on primetime panels. Online, the public fractured into factions, those who believed the revelations only strengthened her resilience, and those who began to question whether the image they had embraced was more curated than courageous. Through it all, Catherine remained silent, not out of fear but precision. She had seen how quickly the court of public opinion could turn, and she would not offer it a misstep. But what she knew, what her advisors knew, was that the worst wasn't behind them, it was still coming. The palace had drawn blood, and now the media smelled it, and in this war of silence and sabotage, there was only one way forward. But in the palace war of silence and sabotage, even the most carefully buried truths can't stop what came next, because Catherine was about to cross a line no royal had crossed before. An anonymous recording surfaces allegedly capturing a tense confrontation between Catherine and the aide in question. Its authenticity is disputed. Its contents? Explosive enough to bring royal operations to a screeching halt. The audio first appeared on an obscure, foreign-based blog known for publishing unverified leaks, but within hours, it had spread like wildfire across international media. The voice, unmistakably poised yet trembling with fury, delivered lines that stunned even the most seasoned royal watchers. "I won't be controlled," it snapped. "This ends now." Though the speaker wasn't explicitly identified, the tone, inflection, and cadence were chillingly familiar. Catherine, or someone who sounded exactly like her. The context? A private confrontation allegedly with the same aide tied to the earlier leaks and internal sabotage. The conversation, grainy but decipherable, suggested not just tension, but a full-blown internal implosion. The aide's voice is heard too calm, clipped, cold. She warns that the issue can be taken to those above you, a phrase that immediately set off alarm bells. Who exactly is above the Princess of Wales? Was this a veiled threat to involve senior royals, perhaps even the king? Or was it a reference to unelected power brokers operating in the firm's shadows? Buckingham Palace didn't wait long to act. Within hours, they issued a formal legal warning to media outlets, citing invasion of privacy and unauthorized use of audio recordings. But it was too late. The file had already been downloaded, shared, and archived across the globe. The moment had escaped their control. Privately, William's team was reportedly blindsided. They had no knowledge of the recording, nor how it was obtained. But when asked by close allies, several aides admitted off the record that the voice was likely real. The reaction within Kensington was a mix of disbelief and fury. Catherine had faced betrayal after betrayal, but this crossed every line. For a member of her own staff to not only challenge her so directly, but allow it to be captured and weaponized, was beyond palace drama. It was war. The recording sent shockwaves through the royal establishment. News anchors abandoned scripts. Commentators speculated on every syllable. For a monarchy that survives on silence, this was the equivalent of a televised collapse. Phrases from the tape became instant headlines. Meanwhile, Buckingham Palace's usual defense, the presentation of a united front, began to crumble. Members of the extended royal family were reportedly furious the matter had reached the public. Some blamed Catherine for losing control. Others blamed the institution for driving her to this point. But beyond the family, the public response was overwhelming. People weren't appalled, they were electrified. Catherine's fury, even in whispers and audio glitches, felt real, human, understandable. The people didn't see rebellion, they saw resistance. And that sentiment posed the palace with its most dangerous dilemma yet. Should they silence her once and for all, bury the recording, tighten the narrative, and hope the storm would pass? Or, for the first time, allow her to speak freely, no filters, no handlers, no protocol? As public pressure boils over, the firm faces an impossible choice: silence the scandal, or let Catherine speak her truth. Late at night, a message appears on the Kensington Palace website, a carefully crafted statement from Catherine herself. Direct, emotional, unprecedented, and the moment the royal family's rules began to fall apart. The world had been holding its breath. The scandal, the recording, the spiraling press coverage, it had all reached a boiling point. And then, in the quiet hours when palace lights are usually dimmed and secrets return to shadows, Catherine shattered centuries of silence. Her message, just under 500 words, was simple but profound. It opened not with apology, but with resolve. In times of uncertainty, she wrote, there is a need for transparency and compassion. There was no denial, no evasion, just acknowledgement that something had gone very wrong inside the House of Windsor, and she was no longer willing to pretend otherwise. She never mentioned the Aide, not once, but her words spoke volumes. She referenced the pressures of protocol, the burden of expectation, and the struggle to communicate clearly in environments not built for openness. She called for dignity, for understanding, for unity, yes, but not at the cost of personal truth. The public didn't just hear her, they felt her. Within minutes, hashtags supporting her surged across platforms. Number We Stand with Catherine. Number Royal Reset. Number Let Her Lead. But the effect was seismic inside palace walls. Courtiers scrambled. Senior advisors were blindsided. Buckingham Palace issued no statement, not even a denial. They chose silence. But in doing so, they left a vacuum, a deafening void where leadership should have stood. And into that void poured outrage, speculation, and a growing hunger for change. Commentators on morning shows began asking questions once unthinkable. Who really controls the narrative inside the royal family? Why are women who show strength so often punished for it? And why, in 2026, is transparency still treated like betrayal? Privately, the Queen Consort was said to be livid. Charles remained silent, torn between paternal instincts and royal duty. William, ever the peacemaker, was trapped supportive of his wife, but under pressure to protect the crown's stability. The monarchy had weathered storms before, but this was different. This wasn't a tabloid affair or a salacious leak. This was a direct communication from within. Catherine had just used the palace's own tools to challenge its most sacred codes. For the first time in a generation, the public wasn't just watching royal drama, they were participating in it. Demands grew louder, letters poured into Parliament. Even political figures began weighing in, cautiously calling for modernization and a conversation about accountability in inherited institutions. The royal family had always relied on tradition as both shield and sword. But now, that tradition was being questioned by the very people it claimed to serve. But while the public rallies, the palace plots and their next move may determine not just Catherine's fate, but the monarchy's future. What started as a walkout escalated into a crisis that exposed every fracture within the firm. Now, with alliances shattered and the public watching closely, the question remains, can the monarchy survive Catherine's rebellion? In the wake of her unprecedented public statement, the palace no longer had the luxury of silence. Behind iron gates and centuries of protocol, panic spread like wildfire. William, once the bridge between modern sentiment and royal tradition, now stood on a knife's edge. His loyalty to the crown was deeply ingrained, bred into him since birth. But his loyalty to Catherine? That was chosen, earned, and now, unshakable. Sources close to the couple described late-night strategy sessions, moments of emotional intensity behind closed doors, and a man torn between the institution he was born to uphold and the woman who dared to challenge it. For the first time, William did not speak as a royal, but as a husband, and that silence spoke volumes. Meanwhile, the Aide at the center of the firestorm vanished from public view. There was no official statement, no mention in the court circular, just a quiet line removed from an internal staff roster and whispers among insiders that the resignation had come with conditions, legal ones, confidentiality clauses, protection from further fallout, but the damage had already been done. The Aide had become a symbol not just of betrayal, but of the internal machinery Catherine was now determined to expose. The monarchy, sensing the ground shifting beneath it, convened an emergency meeting. Survival. Containment. Leaks suggested fierce debate behind those palace doors. Some called for a return to traditional order, silencing dissent, doubling down on control. Others argued for evolution, transparency, and unity through truth. The very foundations of the monarchy were on trial, and the jury was no longer just royal blood, it was the public. And that public had made its choice. Polls showed an unprecedented surge in support for Catherine. Her approval ratings eclipsed those of the king himself. She wasn't just being seen, she was being heard. Not as a rebel, but as a reformer. A modern royal who had the courage to say what others wouldn't. For every headline that questioned her methods, there were 10 more that praised her conviction. She had become, in the eyes of millions, a symbol of strength in a world built on silence. Still, one question echoed louder than any press release or carefully worded palace memo: had the monarchy changed forever? Or was this just another carefully contained rebellion, destined to fade into the annals of royal history? The truth is, no one knows. But what is certain is that Catherine has altered the rules of engagement. She has torn through the illusion of unity and shown the world the power of one voice, clear, unwavering, and unwilling to be silenced. And as the royal stage resets in silence, one truth remains: Catherine's voice is no longer quiet. It's a reckoning. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.